The city of Syracuse, New York looks set to pass good cause eviction protections. It'll be the largest city in New York outside of New York City that has such protections. But one landlord says that the laws will actually punish the good tenants and benefit the bad ones. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it's a topic I've covered many times on this channel. That's good cause eviction protections. I think they're dumb. Okay, I think they're absolutely idiotic, and for a number of reasons. And one of the biggest reasons is that in order to get rid of a tenant, you have to take them to court. Okay, so landlords are going to be incurring a lot of legal expenses, and you know what? They're going to pass those costs on to the good tenants. They're going to pass those costs on. They're going to make their screening processes even more strict. And what this is going to do is going to make it even harder for people to be able to find affordable housing. So, you know what? It doesn't just hurt the landlords when they pass these new laws. Not only that, but you know what? The protections that these laws that they think that they're going to get from these new laws, they're already in place, okay? They already have a lot of strong tenant laws up in New York. This law is ridiculous. It's not needed, and it's only going to punish good landlords and good tenants. That's it, okay? So when you sit there and you're like, well, why can't I find any affordable housing? Well, take a look in the mirror. You voted for this nonsense, or you voted for politicians who put this nonsense into place. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So what do you think of a law? And you know, I've talked about these good cause eviction protections before. A law that lets the government dictate who you can and cannot evict. And when I talk about evict, I'm not even really talking about a true eviction. I'm talking about you can't even end your lease at the defined term. So if your lease is for 1 year, you can't even decide, well, I don't want to renew the lease on this tenant anymore. You have to take that tenant again. Okay, even if you don't get along with that tenant, even if you have 1,000 good reasons to get rid of that tenant, you have to renew the lease on that tenant as long as they're paying the rent. This is how ridiculous these stupid laws are. You know, like if I have a tenant who looks at my wife funny, like, you know, and I don't like it. Well, guess what? I can't just say, well, I'm not going to renew their lease because, you know what, you disrespected my wife. No, I have to go to take this person to court, you know, and pay legal fees and all this nonsense and go through this long, drawn-out process. Stupid. It's absolutely idiotic, and I don't agree with it. But anyway, let's get into the article because you know what? This is written by a landlord up in New York, and they're going to tell you their opinion of this whole situation, okay? So let's get into it. This article is coming from Syracuse.com, and it says, Landlord, enforce existing laws instead of opting in to good cause eviction. Your letters. So yeah, it's kind of like an opinion piece. And I'm glad that landlords up there are writing in and letting people know, hey, these are the true flaws that you have with these stupid laws that you're putting into place. Let's get into it. To the editor, Syracuse does not need good cause eviction. There are Syracuse laws preventing retaliatory eviction since 1996. We have a robust code enforcement department to address poor living conditions. Every property for rent is inspected by codes every 3 years. Landlords pay a majority of city's taxes. 52% of properties are exempt. All new builds not only get pilot tax breaks, but are exempt from good cause eviction. So keep in mind what they just said. New builds are exempt from good cause eviction. What does this mean? This falls back onto the landlords who are already owning properties that are, you know, older and that they are renting out. And they are paying a lot of the property taxes because a lot of the people up in a place like Syracuse are renters. So landlords are paying a lot of these property taxes. Property taxes in New York are sky high, okay? I know because I've looked up, you know, my state makes the list on high property taxes for a different reason, but in New York, it's due to over-regulation, okay? They have way too much government regulation up there, and this law here is a perfect example of the sort of regulations that, you know, cost just a ton to the taxpayers up there. Now, like this person says, they already had laws in place that prevent retaliatory evictions. So what do they think this is? Landlords are not removing people from their properties for no reason. They're removing them for good reason. Now, it might not meet the specific terms that the state or the government says that you can evict somebody for, but they are good reasons. And you know what? A landlord shouldn't have to, explain all of their business decisions to a government official before they're able to make them. No, I mean, what business operates that way? This is idiotic, okay? We want to be able to operate our businesses in the way that is most beneficial to us and not have to explain everything to the middleman, the government. The government makes everything slower, makes everything more expensive, and makes everything harder, period, okay? They are the exact opposite of, they're going to create the exact opposite situation where housing is more expensive and harder to find, and this will not protect anyone. That is my personal belief, okay? But anyway, let me continue. Right now, a non-payment eviction takes over 4 months. Most landlords don't go to court when a tenant is 1 to 2 months behind, because if they can show up in court with the rent, then the case is dropped. That doesn't include the court fees, lawyer fees. A landlord must use a lawyer if it is an LLC. Keep that in mind. And late fees. Often the landlord will terminate the lease because there is an end in sight. The tenant get free legal representation and they get automatic extensions. So landlords, small landlords, whether you own one house, one single family home, or you own 1,000 units, if it's in a LLC, you have to use a lawyer in court. You cannot represent yourself. This is something specific to New York, right? But this goes back to why eviction process costs so much money. And by them putting this good cause eviction protections in place where you have to take a tenant to court in order to even terminate a lease, well, guess what? That means that landlords are incurring significantly more costs. Okay? That sucks. You can't really blame the landlord for saying, hey, this is unfairly targeting us. Because, like I've mentioned 1,000 times before, 99% of landlords are doing everything right. Okay, they weren't willy-nilly trying to retaliate against their tenants and terminate their lease. They weren't, keeping their places in disrepair and, screwing tenants over. No, they were keeping their places up. They were respecting their tenants. Their rents were, market rate, which is, just the same rate as everyone else in town is charging. Okay, they were doing everything right. And yet they're the ones who are going to be suffering under these new laws. They're the ones who are going to be saying, hey, I can't get rid of this garbage tenant who's in my property terrorizing me. That's awful, and I hate seeing that sort of thing. But that is the end result of these sort of laws where the government steps in and they leave nothing, like nothing up to the landlord when it comes to decision making in terms of their own property. So what is the result? It's obvious what the result's going to be. A lot of small landlords in particular are going to leave. They're going to be like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this nonsense anymore. If you just own a handful of single family homes and you have to deal with this nonsense and, every time it's costing you thousands of dollars, it's costing you your peace of mind. You're facing, financial ruin because of the stupid laws they have in place. Well, guess what? You're going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to sell. I'm done. I am done and I'm not dealing with this nonsense anymore. Who pays for those who choose not to pay rent? The good tenants. A landlord can't run a building with no money coming in. A lease is a legal document. The tenants' rights groups say you can still evict for disturbance and non-payment, not without going to court. Rentals are only able to charge what the housing market will bear. I can't charge $2,000 if everyone else is charging $1,000. If a landlord raises the rent too high, move to a cheaper place. Can't find one? Likely the reason the rent was so cheap is because the landlord was being decent. I encourage you to go read the Syracuse Tenant Union page. I also encourage you to go to landlord court and just listen. Instead of one more law punishing decent landlords, insist that the current laws be enforced. Patricia Goodyear, a landlord from Syracuse, New York. And I love this letter. It expresses exactly what a lot of landlords are thinking. When I read about laws like this, she's just saying, hey, this is the way it is. This is exactly what the problems are. And if you are not paying attention, you're going to actually make the problem much worse, you know, like this is something I've mentioned many times. She says, you know, if you can't charge $2,000, everybody else is charging $1,000, which is, you know, they're always talking about, oh, well, this is you know, like the rent increases are too much and now people won't be able to afford to even live here. And I'm like, well, that's idiotic. If people couldn't afford to live here, they wouldn't be able to pay the rent. And then therefore, your unit would be sitting empty. And no landlord wants their unit to be sitting empty. So yeah, it doesn't even make sense, you know, like that's kind of on a rent control argument. But anyway, tell me what you think of the good cause eviction protections in the comment section down below. And you know, I hope that a lot of people are of the same opinion as me, that this is a complete garbage law that's only going to hurt things.